This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 14th of August 2024 at home in Wicklow, and it is an episode about self-doubt, anxiety, being wrong, and it is also about The Bear, the television series about the hellishness of obsession and family trauma and the intense and explosive heat of working in the kitchen. So there is a relationship between those two things, the TV series The Bear and self-doubt, and I talk about that in a lot of detail. So if you like that show, or you're interested in that show, or you want to watch that show, listen to this episode. You're going to hear a lot of stuff, including spoilers. And if that's not your bag, come back again another time. But you wouldn't have got this far, would you? Hardly, if you weren't going to listen. Okay, that's coming up around the corner. I'll see you there. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my moji inside.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for pressing play on this particular episode. I hope it will be to your liking. So, how are you? How's the week been? How are you coping at the moment? Last week was my first week recording in the new abode. Hashtag secret garden, perhaps. But my proximity to the road where I record, I'm considering hashtag drive-by or hashtag roadkill. It doesn't have the same connotations as hashtag blessed, which was how I used to refer to our lovely abode that we have just vacated. But until I can sort out the soundproofing in the little recording studio here, hashtag drive-by might be the one. In any case, I had a funny I had an experience last week. A very old friend of mine, someone I've known for a very long time, creative individual himself. He finally listened to an episode of the podcast, and then he sort of damned me with faint praise, and suggested that he likes podcasts where you can listen to an expert. Sorry, excuse me. And I was like, yeah, okay, grand. So I think, and his suggestion was he'd like to hear me talk about films and acting. So I was like, well, actually, if you go back and listen to many of the previous episodes, you'd know that is something I do regularly. Not that I consider myself an expert in these matters. And in many ways, even though I referred to myself as an expert last week, but that was in the sort of strange area of being able to sit down and press record and freestyle on the mic once a week. I'm not sure if that's a type of expertise that is highly valued, but in terms of a knowledge base, I don't consider myself an expert in the world of film, acting, martial arts. I think adept is a word that comes to mind. My sort of relationship to humility, and my relationship to the admission of ignorance, it just prevents me from ever putting on that hat, because my assumption is there is always so much more to learn. There's always a deeper hole to delve, to dig into, to explore. And there are so many more people out there with a deeper knowledge base, which is not to in any way invalidate what I have to offer, because usually when I'm speaking, it is coming from a place of consideration and thoughtfulness, and some amount of knowledge, whether that's via study of sorts or whether that's purely experience based. I don't usually just shoot in the dark. But no, it was interesting. I sort of offered back to my friend that the podcast has as one of its tenets a sort of acknowledged inexpertise, and is not trying to be that, and in fact quite the contrary. It's trying to position itself into an area where one can be comfortable not knowing answers. And that continues to be a proposition of the podcast. It continues to be a philosophical proposition of mine, that this desire for certitude and this desire for, I suppose, concrete answers, I don't find that sexy or appealing or interesting. I'm not really interested in the full stop. I'm much more interested in the perpetual wondering and wandering and querying. And that in itself, of course, can become old very quickly if the relevant context or nuance isn't applied. And I hope in my own attempts that I'm successful more than not in that regard. But it is, certainly this year, I've, personally, I haven't been having the greatest of years. That's fine. And I've spoken very explicitly at certain moments throughout that journey. I did find myself last week just considering the whole idea of self-doubt, because that's, again, I would expect or imagine or suspect that many people have a certain amount of self-doubt, some more than others, maybe some to a debilitating level, self-doubt that informs ever-present uncertainty or anxiety. I personally don't feel I have that kind of self-doubt, but I'm finding myself looking at that idea of self-doubt and being willing to open the door to basically saying I'm wrong. And I'm just wondering about that idea. Like, how comfortable are you with the idea of admitting that you're wrong? How comfortable are you with inviting in that possibility that how you've been thinking, how you've been living, how you've been behaving, how you've been processing, how you've been narrativizing your own life, is it possible that you're wrong? And again, I did assert earlier this year, at the start of the year, having just turned 50 in January, that I'm not having a midlife crisis. And, the stress and, personal struggles I've been experiencing this year, I do not attribute them to any kind of midlife crisis. I think it's just purely coincidental. But I think it's a useful thought exercise to sort of test your working theories, your working philosophies it's a good idea to just examine them and go, am I completely wrong? Is the story that I tell myself garbage? Is it something delusional and absolutely fueled with denial? Or our best case scenario, you're right. Now, last week I spoke about rightness in terms of the natural state of things and your natural state and the natural balance and the sort of the right fit with things that are natural, and that kind of rightness. But now, this week, I'm asking the more conventional understanding of that word right, as in correct. And maybe this is getting just a bit semantic, but I think, I suppose fundamentally it's about looking at results. And, results are what's happening in your life, like what's happening in your life around you that indicates you're making good choices, right choices, correct choices, and what is indicating to you that perhaps you are not making good, right, and correct choices. And I'm certainly willing to look at myself and go, hold on a second. You might be going about things completely the wrong way. And I'm again, this is a bit of overlap with last week's episode. I'm pretty clear to myself about what I'm trying to avoid and what I'm trying to not do. And so much of what I've spoken about and what I've shared or reflected upon on the podcast has been a sort of a corollary to very specific choices and decisions that I've made over the last few years. And well over kind of 3.5 years into this experiment. It's not just the podcast, but other things as well. I am at a stage where I'm looking at, okay, how sustainable is this? Is there enough evidence to suggest that I'm on the right path? Is there enough evidence that allows me to avoid other things, to justify that? Is there enough evidence to indicate that limited success can be survived in the short term because better things are coming? And I'm not sure is the real answer. I mean, good things have come in the last few years, but I definitely find myself at a moment now where I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit and going, is this template that I've created, is it finally time to throw it all out and do something completely different? And who is really benefiting from what I'm doing apart from myself? And that's there's an implication with that question. There's an implication of selfishness. There's an implication of only looking after myself and only minding myself and only taking care of my own wellness. And I've certainly made the argument over the history of the podcast, and perhaps at different stages when I was doing the blog, theclearout.com, that one of the driving theories that I operate with is that if you're looking after yourself in truly healthy ways, that is only going to be of benefit to other people. It's only going to be of benefit to your ecosystem. It's only going to be of benefit to your immediate loved ones. It's only going to be of benefit to the spaces you enter and the other people you come into contact with. Because when we're not well, we're bringing a dysfunctional version of ourselves into those spaces, into those points of contact. And my daughter just walked past the shed, hashtag the shed, and looked at me very concernedly. I think she's like, what the hell is he still doing on that microphone? She doesn't realise it only started 15 minutes ago. Anyway, look, that's just really, that's just a bit of a preamble and a bit of a personal share of where my head is at the moment. But I am going to tether that topic of self-doubt, being wrong, and the attached anxiety. And I'll see, what else might join that merry troop. Because I want to discuss for the rest of this episode the TV show The Bear, which may be the most anxiety-inducing television program ever made. I think I've mentioned The Bear previously, but I'm going to speak as deeply as I can for the rest of this episode about the whole show. It's there are 3 seasons of the show. I've just got 1 episode left of the 3rd season to watch, so I'm very much up to speed with it. And I'm just going to speak with spoilers. So if this is a show you haven't seen and are interested in seeing, I'll give you some broad brush strokes as I begin, but then I will go into some spoilers without thinking about it too much. So I just don't want you to be annoyed and go, "Oh, I didn't want to know that." So if you're planning to watch it and don't want to know more about it, switch off, go and listen to something else, go and check out another episode of my show or others. But The Bear, I've just been immersing myself in season 3, and basically, and I'm sure if you watch movies and TV at all, you'll be all over this. But for those who may not have encountered it, The Bear is a TV show about a brilliant high-end fine food chef who returns to his family sandwich bar to run it in the aftermath of his older brother's passing. And he basically is trying to turn this sandwich bar that was hugely popular, very much a place of the people in Chicago where it's set, and he comes in and just tries to transform it little by little into a fine dining establishment of the kind where he trained and mastered his craft. And the show just runs on conflict and tension and personality clashes and pressure and the inability to communicate and the inability to express oneself and the inability to deal with trauma and grief and pain and anguish. And so it all really revolves around the playing of the main character, who is Carmen Berzatto, played by Jeremy Allen White. And I'm not sure what else he's done. I know he was in the wrestling movie that I spoke about earlier this year, The Iron Claw. based on the true story of a Texan wrestling family in the 80s who had some terrible kind of tragedies befall them, and really a movie that is a tribute to brotherly love, with some great performances in it, particularly from Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Holt McCallany and others. A really lovely film, quite distressing in its way, but lovely. And other than that, The Bear is the only thing I know Jeremy Allen White for, and he's excellent. He's excellent in this role, and so much is about his face. He's just got these big blue eyes and a head of cherubic curls, and he looks kind of down in the dumps or sad most of the time, perpetually sort of worried, stressed, reflective, thoughtful. He looks like he just took his thumb out of his mouth, and he just has this sort of, the natural thrust of his face is sort of downwards, and he has a great still face, which is just so perfect for camera. The camera can just hold on his face, and he is just there, still, and it's all happening inside. And his major issue as a character, Carm's major issue is his inability to articulate himself emotionally, and he's in such pain. It's just palpable, and he just finds so many different ways to avoid speaking and to avoid expressing himself, and it just leads to unending micro conflicts, and just full on conflicts, and it leads to alienation. And it's just so funny because I watch it I watch it as a middle child. I watch it as someone who grew up with a lot of tension in the home, a lot of squabbling between parents. I have such an impulse to fix things and to make everyone feel better, and to be a bridge builder and to make things right. So I'm watching I watch this show and I'm just like, come on, just go and say something, go and say sorry, go and be nice, go and fix this, just go and have a cry, let it out. And I think fundamentally what Jeremy Allen White does so well is he really embodies this kind of dissociation, that I think is it's a very familiar response to trauma and to grief. And what he does is he channels his energy into the things that will keep him safe from his grief and help him continue to avoid facing his emotional self. And so for him, it's cooking. And what's interesting, well, for me, what's interesting about this show is, like, I'm not a foodie. I'm not someone who watches food programs particularly. I did enjoy some of those Gordon Ramsay series back in the day, but I'm not someone who obsesses over the latest sensation in the world of cuisine, fine dining, super chefs, celebrity chefs, any of that. I just kind of, I mean, for one, I'm a picky eater. So I'd just be kicked out of any of these places pretty quickly. Excuse me. The food would be wasted on me. I'm like, what's that? Oh God, I'm not touching that. But I think a key distinction here regarding the food and the sort of fetishization and pornographization of food as presented in the show is it's not really ever from the customer's point of view. It's always from the chef's point of view. It's very different. Like I think that's a key distinction, because you really are, you know, you can just transfer this into any area of expertise, any area of personal obsession, any area of expert craftsmanship, where you're with someone who has dedicated themselves to their craft and they are absolutely excellent at it. And I think, you know, to harken back to my friend's veiled criticism of the podcast, it's great to spend time with people who are passionate about something and have real expertise and knowledge in that area, whether as a consumer or as a practitioner. You know, it's, I mean, a lot of enjoyment in that area depends on how well someone can communicate that passion and not just be boring. Because I guess there's millions of train spotters and plane spotters all around the world whose passion is writing down serial numbers and departure times of plane. I don't know, what do they do? I'm not sure how fascinated I would be to spend time with those people. I might be amused or bemused, but being able to communicate something and communicate something well and describe it in a way that evokes the feeling that is attached to that passion, that's where the interest can be enjoyed by others. And otherwise, as a practitioner, I suppose the work speaks for itself. And the Bear is excellent at depicting that journey and that process of creation, of improvement, of testing, and also brilliant at depicting the growth journey of others who are less experienced. So where the Bear as a show really hums and really vibrates is in the relationships. And the other main characters that we are introduced to are family members. The cousin, Richie, played by Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who is excellent. Really, really good. Really good at just communicating this sort of, again, this kind of, you know, very messy, chaotic, impulsive, damaged, you know, male character who has so much sort of feeling in him. You know, the actor, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, he just does such a good job at conveying the personal battle. And he is much more volatile than Jeremy Allen White's Carmen, and puts it all out there. And he's on the other side of a marriage. He's trying to be, you know, remain a dedicated father. He has a lot of feelings still for his ex, and he is put on a journey of self-improvement by learning how to be a high-end maitre d'. So you have these kind of individual character arcs in the series where you see the different characters go on their own journey of kind of betterment and self-improvement and overcome their own prejudices and fears and get to a better place. Like in that regard, there's quite a sentimental streak in the show, which which I like, which I respond to, because the drama and the conflict on the journey to get there makes it pay off. It's not just sentiment. I mean, there's a lot of feeling in the show. There's Carmen's sister, Natalie, known as Sugar, and she's sort of working on the business side of things, and she is, like Carmen, a traumatized child of a messed up family, and I'm getting to that. And then there is the brother who passed away, played in flashback fairly frequently throughout the show by the brilliant Jon Bernthal, who, again, he's just kind of cornered the market on a very particular type of male character. Muscular, macho, emotional, messy, confrontational, vulnerable, soft, hard, chaotic, and I don't think there's anybody who does it as well as him. And so he's his kind of, the empty space left by his death is something so many of the characters are dealing with. And then there are other chefs, people who were, either people who were working at the sandwich bar. There's Tina, played by Liza Colon-Zayas, and in season 3 she has an episode dedicated to her journey that brought her into contact with the original sandwich bar and Jon Bernthal. That is a great episode that would stand alone. These series, they have, I'm thinking of Atlanta as well. Every now and again a series just pops out, a single episode that is a standout and can be watched without any particular reference to the rest of the show and be massively rewarding. And this one, following Tina's story, is really, really good, very emotional, very powerful, very moving, and directed by one of the co-stars in the show, Ayo Edibiri. And Ayo Edibiri plays a very ambitious young chef who, as soon as she knows Carmen has come back to take over the sandwich bar, she rocks up with her CV, and he's like, you've got some serious training behind her, but she just wants to be with him and train under him, or further her training under him. And the tension between she and him is, it's one of the main drivers of the sort of the tension and the anxiety in the story, because he's just not a great listener or a great collaborator. His own anxiety just makes him sort of kind of bull on and push ahead and not be receptive. And she is super talented. Her character Sydney is super talented, and has a very different energy, which she's bringing into this largely Italian American, volatile setting where there's a lot of familiarity between the characters, old childhood friends, family relationships that go back years, which facilitates this sort of very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? She's been immersed in a very established world of relationships, that she is the new person. She's the new person entering this space, and there's all this history, and the relationships have that sort of push and pull, that ebb and flow, that kind of bustle and thrust of old relationships, lots of banter, lots of a real ease with arguing with each other, and in the case of some of these characters, a real ease with shouting and screaming at each other, and she's got to negotiate that, while clearly, like from the viewer's point of view, we're going, yeah, but she's got her eye on the prize. Like she's looking at her career like this. She's here for the food. She's here to better herself and to be under the master. So it takes her to the next level as a chef, and all of the kind of the squabbling and the infighting and the family vendettas and the hot-headedness and the temper tantrums, and all this sort of the breakdown in communication. Like, you can see her episode by episode just trying to negotiate. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Should I still be here? Should I still be here? And of course it comes to sort of a dramatic head in season 3, when an opportunity to go in a different direction is presented to her, and Ayo Edibiri just plays it again. Like, it's just great acting in this show. There's this great acting, and it's it's warm, it's human, it's messy, it's lived in. The showrunner is Christopher Storer. He's giving the actors time to really work their stuff. I'm not sure what their rehearsal process is, but something lovely happens on the screen between the actors on a regular basis, and there's a naturalism, there's a flow, there's a chemistry between the characters, and it just works. It just works so well, and the plot of moving things to a higher level in the kitchen, of transforming the sandwich bar into a high-end restaurant, the financial pressure, the time pressure, the delivery pressure, the pressure to get food on plates, bums on seats. It just keeps things moving constantly, and the last thing it is a static series. It just bombs along, but again, really, really well cast, and it's in the casting, in the different sort of tempos of the playing, the different registers of the playing, the different faces, the different voices, the different dynamics, which of course in a way reflects the cooking. It reflects the cooking that's so central to the show as well. The different flavors and textures and combinations and compositions, and the show is doing that with not just with the casting, but with the editing, with the soundtrack, with the score. It's really functioning so well on every level. And Lionel Boyce is one of the other actors that needs a mention. So this is the actor who plays Marcus, who's the dessert chef in the kitchen. And similarly to Richie's character, who's sent to learn how to be a top-end maitre d', Marcus is sent to Copenhagen to see how to make the finest desserts you've ever set your eyes upon, and very capably assisted in Copenhagen by I'll have to go blank on the actor's name, Will Poulter. Will Poulter, wasn't he the actor from Son of Rambo? He's turned up in quite a few things. He just keeps showing himself to be just a very safe pair of hands. He doesn't have a big role in The Bear, but he turns up in a few episodes and he's just really, really good. So yeah, Marcus has his journey. Oliver Platt is in The Bear as well, as this sort of financier uncle to the Berzatto family, who, there are things that are shady about him. He's kind of obnoxious, he's kind of pushy, but again kind of dedicated to the guys at the kitchen. So again, these kind of family dynamics, and it's it's a nice role. It's a nice role for Oliver Platt. If you kind of reflect on his career, and he's kind of played sidekicks and B-men, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh down the cast list, and it's interesting to see him in this role where like he's not in terms of his screen time, but in terms of his status, like he's one of the higher ups, one of the senior players, and has a lot of power to wield, and a lot of influence, and a lot of heft in the world of the bear, and yet there's such an undercurrent of humanity and comedy and human connection underneath everything that happens in the bear, that it cuts through. It's used to great effect, I think, in the show to kind of cut through the tension and humanize the characters, and then it'll very quickly switch back to the other mode. So it's this sort of this balancing act. But I think season 3 has been sort of audacious in a way in terms of the directorial choices. The first episode of season 3 was almost like a tone poem, just a sequence of beautiful passages, beautifully shot, beautifully lit, beautifully scored or soundtracked, which fundamentally followed the journey of Carmen's apprenticeship in the big kitchens of his training, across Europe and in American kitchens, and it just basically complete immersion in the sensory experience and of his experience and how he was viewing and seeing things and how he was being viewed and being seen. And you have, again, great casting, these kind of tasty casting appointments. Olivia Colman as a head chef in a high-end restaurant, one of his last places to ascend the ladder. I only realised in this season, I finally recognised this horrible confrontational, obnoxious, abusive chef, played brilliantly by Joel McHale, who he used to be the presenter of The Soup. And he doesn't, again, not a lot of screen time, but like something's good when even those little small parts, they just punch through so clearly, and they just get under your skin and they needle you, and you just want you want payback, and in a way, with to go back to Jeremy Allen White, like this is the whole thing is an exercise in denied consummation. So there's just this frustration that goes with following this guy. Like I find him very, very likable, and you want him to do well, because what I see when I look at him is I just see the damaged boy. I just see the sad, the big-eyed boy full of pain and just not having the tools to sort himself out. And so he's going to lash out, he's going to explode, and he is really good at sabotaging his relationships. And that's the question when you're watching the show, is like, is he going to just completely ruin this because he can't get out of his own way? And he's not playing alpha, and that's it. I think that's another, it's another nice choice. Like, he plays quite small, and he plays quiet, and he plays guilty, and he plays ashamed, and he plays sort of faltering and meek. So he's not he's not, for example, in the Gordon Ramsay mode of just like getting everybody's faces and being horrible, and yet his choices still aren't really helping him. And yeah, I do think I spoke about the standout episode from season 2. I'm sure I referred to this on an earlier episode of the pod, but in any case, there's an extraordinary standalone episode from the middle of season 2, which is fundamentally, it's a Christmas dinner. It's a flashback episode, and it's in that episode that we finally meet Donna Berzatto, the mother of the family. In that episode, John Bernthal's character Mikey was still alive. Donna Berzatto's partner, Bob Odenkirk, was in it. I can't remember like the character's name. The husband, the father, I can't remember if the father he died or he left. The father's not on the scene, and maybe hasn't been for a long time. But that episode, which is a long episode, John Mulaney's also in that episode. Is Sarah Paulson also in that episode? It's just, yeah, it's, do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of there's a flashback scene is it at the end of The Godfather 2 that there's a flashback scene where everyone's still alive and Michael's back from college, and I've just gone blank on Talia Shire's character name in The Godfather. What's the sister's name? But she is introducing the boyfriend, and again I'm just having total brain farts here. The boyfriend who beats her up as the husband in the first Godfather, and then Sonny, played by James Caan, goes and beats the head off him. There's that scene in The Godfather. I'm sure it's at the end of Godfather 2. They have the flashback and they're waiting for Don Corleone to come home and present him with a birthday cake, and there's these tensions at the table, and Sonny's trying to be the man, and Michael's already showing his kind of independent thinking, and Robert Duvall is there as kind of peacemaker. And Connie is the sister. Anyway, there's something of that in this episode from the second season of The Bear. This kind of, long flashback episode, like a set piece episode, and it, as I say, Christmas dinner at the home of the Berzattos, and Jamie Lee Curtis is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal as the mother, the matriarch, with intense mental health problems, intense anger, intense personal drama, maybe a narcissistic personality disorder, and just compelling to watch. So utterly believable, and the way her character dominates everything, and makes everything about her, and the way everyone is kind of watching her and wary and being very careful how they operate and move around her. It's something it's something I recognised very well, and I'm sure I spoke about this before, and I was just saying, like, hats off to Jamie Lee Curtis. Just this whole other dimension to her acting that I'd never seen before, and that is an episode that can be watched by itself without reference to anything else, just as this showpiece for ensemble acting, and brilliantly shot, brilliantly filmed, brilliantly directed, just capturing all these family dynamics, different allegiances, different tensions, and just the sort of the unpleasantness and awkwardness, and emotional violence that erupts naturally from trauma. So really good. And Jamie Lee comes back in season 3 for, again, another sort of audaciously shot episode. And, I'm saying audacious because fundamentally, I don't know, you may or may not remember, if you ever watched Breaking Bad, there was an episode where the guys are in their, well, it's not their drug lab, but they're in the drug lab of the main crack dealing dude, played by Giancarlo Esposito. Oh God, what's his name? Los Polos Hermanos, is it? Los Hermanos, the Chicken Brothers. He runs the fast food joint, but he has the crack lab. And there's an episode in that where Walter White and his young sidekick are trying to catch a fly, and it all takes place in the lab. And I know a lot of people had an issue with that episode. I remember enjoying it at the time, but it's, it really, those kinds of episodes test the patience of the watcher. And there's an episode in season 3 of The Bear, which reminded me of that, because it's kind of like a two-hander for almost the entirety of the show, between Jamie Lee Curtis as the mother, and the actress who plays Natalie, also known as Sugar. What's her name again? It's Abby something or other. Abby Elliott. And Abby Elliott, Natalie, her character, is heavily pregnant and has had to very reluctantly phone the mad mother, because no one else is answering her phone, because she's just gone into sort of severe contractions in the middle of heavy traffic, and she has to ring her mother to come and get her to the hospital. And then that happened in the previous episode, and then the episode that I'm talking about, they're basically in the hospital room, waiting for the contractions to kick in, waiting for the dilation to increase, and waiting for Natalie's husband to get there. And so much of the episode is shot in extreme close-up on the faces of the two actresses, mainly Jamie Lee Curtis's face. And it's such a brave choice, and I found myself being quite resistant to it initially. I was going, I just got it straight away. It's like, okay, we're going to spend all our time with these two girls, these two actresses. And I was like, I'm not sure how interesting this is going to be. So I get much more excited by the drama in the kitchen and what's happening with Carmen. But I have to say, the acting won me over, because the acting was so good. And Jamie Lee Curtis's ability in that role to communicate so much and to so clearly capture a sort of a toxic maternity that's attached to damage, that's attached to narcissism, and her volatility and what she's doing facially, because again, like these extreme close-ups on the faces of her and Abby Elliott, and it's like a war is happening behind, not just behind Jamie Lee Curtis's eyes, but behind the muscles of her face, inside that skull, under her skin. And it's like you're waiting for, an eruption of something grotesque, and she's just flowing with it. And it's not overacting, in my opinion, and it's not hammy, and it's not, let me show you what amazing things I can make this character do. It's much more grounded and rooted in something real than that. And I just found myself completely won over and engrossed and very, very moved. And yeah, like again, you're thinking, well, I was thinking she can't top what she did in the previous episode, the one I'm referring to from season 2, the Christmas dinner episode. But she may have in this episode, and again, you're like, these are not accidental choices. Like the writers, the directors of the episodes, like they're making choices. They're making choices to give us this end product. And season 3 has definitely pushed that envelope a little bit further, and I think to very good effect. So I mean, I think fundamentally what I'm saying is this is quite a good show. It's excellent. No, it's really, really good. And if you like great acting, if you like emotional acting, it definitely is. It's a great show to watch. Obviously, if you like food, it's a great show to watch. And there are, there's such strength in the writing. There's such strength in the casting that it really does kind of balance out. So there can be intense drama and intense stress, but great moments of comic relief as well, and some quite flashy cameos. I'm not sure if it was the same episode, but Josh Hartnett and John Cena both turned up in season 3 at different points for just kind of one-off scenes. So a show is doing the do when they can start peopling their smaller parts with these kind of largish names. So that's it. That's The Bear, and get it into you. So it's kind of it's up there. I was trying to think of other anxiety-inducing shows, and nothing massively came to mind. I mean, I remember Breaking Bad had some truly horrific moments. I'm not sure if it was constant anxiety though. Oh, Gus Frings, that was the character's name that Giancarlo Esposito played. But Uncut Gems, the movie by the Safdie brothers a few years ago, with Adam Sandler as the compulsive and extremely obnoxious gambler who just, holy hell, what a great performance by Adam Sandler. And that movie is nerve shredding. So I think between Uncut Gems and the character anxiety that I spoke about a couple of episodes ago from Inside Out 2, and many episodes of The Bear, that they're definitely up there on the podium for the medal positions. And I'll let you decide which should get gold. But anxiety, self-doubt, just what I was talking about at the start of the show, the uncertainty of, am I doing the right thing? This is the stuff of great drama. It might not be the stuff of great podcasting. But I'll keep ploughing my lonely furrow, and we'll see where I end up. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of this episode. If nothing else, a recommendation to watch a great show. And as always, you can find me out there in the world of the internet, on social media. You can find The Clear Out on Facebook, on Instagram, for the time being, still on YouTube. And otherwise, you can find this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if for some reason you still enjoy emailing, you can email me at theclearoutlive@gmail.com. And if you really enjoy what I do here, you can throw me some hard-earned shekels on patreon.com/theclearout. And anything you could donate, give, pledge, we're talking about the price of a cup of coffee or a sandwich or a couple of pain au chocolat. That would be excellent. What a lovely thing you could do for this ongoing effort in putting something nice out there into the world. That's not just for me, contrary to some people's opinions, but it's for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back next week with something different. Thanks for listening. Mind yourselves. All the best. Bye.